Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Spurs Up Show, presented by the Armchair All-Americans. I'm your host, Chris Phillips, joined as always with my co-host, Thomas Flo. We got a packed show for you today. We're talking about the Gamecocks 2018 season. In our final season preview, we're making some predictions today. Also, a fantastic interview with former Gamecocks wide receiver Torrey Gurley. But before we get to all that, if you're not subscribed yet, I'm not sure what you're doing at this point with the season about to kick off 11 days from now. The best Gamecocks podcast on the internet by far. Be sure to go online, rate, subscribe, share, and download the Spurs Up Show on iTunes, the Stitcher app, wherever you get your media, wherever you get your podcast. You can check us out there, the Spurs Up Show. Be sure to check us out on our social media as well. We're on Twitter and Instagram at ArmchairSCar, also Facebook, Armchair South Carolina. Our podcast, the Spurs Up Show, is on social media as well at the Spurs Up Show on Twitter. And also, like I said, this is a podcast presented to you by the Armchair All-Americans. Please be sure to go to armchairallamericans.com for all of your latest breaking Gamecock news, coverage, our podcast, of course, the Spurs Up Show, and all of our other coverage there. We cover everything from collegiate to professional sports. We also do stuff like esports, a lot of really, really exciting stuff going on armchairallamericans.com, especially with the football season about to get into full swing. So please be sure to go check us out at armchairallamericans.com. So like I said, I was talking to you, Tom, in the pre-show. I'm really, really excited for this episode. We've been breaking everything down from offense, defense, special teams. Today, we get to overall kind of take a look at the season itself, make some predictions, really get into it. It's crazy to think the game week is next week. This is going to be our last podcast without a game during that week. As the time we're recording this on Tuesday night, the 21st, we're just 11 days from kickoff. The season, it's crazy how quickly it's gotten here, how long it's taken to get here, but how quickly it's gotten here as well. Thinking just next week we'll be previewing and breaking down Coastal Carolina. But again, Thomas Floyd joins me. Tom, great to have you back on. And I hope you're as excited as I am.
It's great to be here. I'm pumped about the season. Football's back. It's official.
Yeah, and it's just great to just jump in and kind of make some predictions. We can see how absurdly wrong we'll be in a couple of months. So that's always a good thing.
Wrong. So instead of us going what I predict, we go undefeated. So
yeah, it's always a fun time. We definitely need to have a show later in the year where like a freezing cold takes type deal. If we're just like 100, just way off for sure. But like I said, we've been breaking everything down: offense, defense, every type of position unit you can think of. Today, I just really want to talk about the season itself, the biggest questions heading into 2018. And that's really what I want to start. We're going to get into our predictions a little later in the show, but I want to really want to start. And Tom, me and you can go back and forth. I'll give you my three of my biggest questions. We'll go one by one, and you give me yours. We'll go back and forth. So I want to start, Tom. Really my biggest one, and maybe the most obvious one, is can Deebo Samuel stay healthy for an entire season? I mean, to me, that's going to be kind of the basis and really how South Carolina does this season if they have a really, really great year. It's because Deebo Samuel is able to stay on the field and stay healthy. We know what he did through, two and a half games a year ago. I mean, he was absolutely electric. I think he averaged over 20 yards per touch. We've broken him down constantly on the offense, on the special teams. He was actually just named a first-team All-American preseason by ESPN and AP Top 25 as an all-purpose player. And, Tom, to me, again, I think this season, the success of this season is going to hinge on the health of Deebo Samuel. And to me, that is a huge question because he has not played a full season since he's been at Carolina.
Well, I mean, when you look at it, and obviously we played so well against NC State and Missouri, and those were probably our best two games last year other than Michigan, and they were both because he played so well. And then you look at Kentucky, opening drive, throws past him, takes to the house for a touchdown. And obviously the offensive production wasn't there that game that would have been there if Deebo wasn't there. If Deebo was there, I mean. But I think that, if he can stay healthy this year and not get dinged up at all, it's going to be the difference between 8-4 and 10-2, or even really 9-3 and 7-5. It could end up being the difference between, because he's obviously supposed to be such a big role in the offense, according to what all the coaches are saying. But my biggest question is, can the running game be there to support Bentley? Because obviously last year, Rico Dowdle was hurt the entire time. Tyson Williams could never get it going, really, take it to the actual field. And then A.J. Turner's not an every down back. And you can't expect him to go out there and perform like that. But I think that, losing Deebo early in the season could have had less an effect if Rico would have been on the field or Tyson would have had the production that everyone expected. But I just think that they have to be there this year because you got to have a reliable running game. So Bentley, everybody knows on 3rd and 4, 3rd and 3, what South Carolina's doing most of the time. If it's longer than that, they're throwing the ball because if we don't have any backs, like we know could go out there and get you 3 last year. But I just think that, if they're there this year, then, we could probably run the table.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, obviously, I think anyone that watched any bit of South Carolina football a year ago knows that South Carolina has got to be better on 3rd and 4th and shorts way too many times a year ago. And granted, it probably had something to do with the extremely predictable play calling where South Carolina were getting a bunch formation. Everybody in the stadium, including you and I, knew what South Carolina was doing, running it up the middle, trying to get a yard or two. And yeah, I mean, they've talked about it a lot in preseason camp, obviously. You know, the thing that really encouraged me, I wanted to get to this on the show at some point. I'm glad we got to it here, Tom. You know, Bobby Bentley and kind of, you know, they've obviously closed off coaches' availability as far as media is concerned. But Bobby Bentley said something last week to me that was really, really encouraging. They asked him, you know, is it really going to be more of a running back by committee approach? Do you want to have one guy? And he flat out said, we want to have one guy carrying the load. If we got a guy and he gets in there and gets hot, we'd love to have that one guy. I mean, we'd love to have that guy step up. He mentioned the biggest thing a year ago that stopped them from that was injuries. I mean, Rico Dowdle obviously going down. Tyson Williams was nicked up here and there. And that's something maybe we didn't take into account quite enough or didn't think of quite enough. But I think if you can have all three of those guys healthy for this season, I think Rico Dowdle is going to be your clear-cut #1 running back. I've heard a lot of great things about what he's doing in fall camp. You see, you know, obviously there's very, very limited video that we're seeing from practice, but the videos you do see, Rico Dowdle looks explosive. He looks quick. He looks tough. And, you know, obviously the running game right now, they have a goal of 5.5 yards per carry, which would be a fantastic number. And I think South Carolina might win the SEC if they hit 5.5 yards per carry. But yeah, I think if South Carolina can be over 4 yards a carry, 4.5, I think would be a great number. And I agree. I don't think Jake Bentley's the kind of quarterback, you know, with all due respect, he's not the guy. I don't think he should be asked to go throw the ball 40 times in a game. He's not Drew Lock. He's not just going to throw it all over the yard. I don't know if he's really in the offense to do that either, but I'm not sure he's that type of quarterback. He needs some sort of a running game if South Carolina is going to take that next step from an 8-9 win team to possibly challenging Georgia for the SEC East. My second biggest question, Tom, relates to the defensive backfield. You know, will the youth in the defensive backfield step up? Obviously, you know, Will Muschamp has harped on it over and over again, the lack of experience at safety. Obviously, you've got Stephen Montack, but from there, you know, you've got a lot of transfers, a lot of youngsters, JT Ebay, the Rice transfer, Jamel Cook, the Southern Cal transfer, they're waiting on his eligibility. Nick Harvey has played back there as well. Jamias Williams steps in his first season at safety. How will he do? And then guys in the defensive backfield like Israel Mukwamu, J.C. Horn, who they're extremely high of. But even though they're high on them, there's a ton of talent. How quickly will those guys mature and how big of an impact will they make early on? To me, is a huge question going into 2018.
You know, I agree there. I think that, you know, especially when you look at South Carolina potentially starting J.C. Horn at the other corner opposite Rashad Fenton and then playing Keyshawn Nixon in the nickel. Or in the, nickel will be right. Call for that. But I think that there obviously are big questions across the board there, especially with losing Taven Jackson recently, a guy that's been in your program for a year that you could have brought, you know, he could have played valuable snap sheet. But obviously, secondary is a big question. And something else not a lot of people are talking about is what does losing Scott Morgan do to you? Because obviously he was such a tremendous player last year, over, I think, close to 100 tackles, 3 or 4 picks at least, I'm pretty sure. Just you don't lose a guy like that and not see it on your defense. So I'm wondering how big is that going to be? And if freshmen are forced to play this year, or maybe a redshirt freshman like Damani Stanley, if he's forced to play this year, what's it going to be like? And how can they stop the run? Can they play in coverage like Sky did? What's it going to be like? Because I just don't know right now.
Yeah, you make a great point. It's funny. We actually did our position unit preview today, and we talked about the linebacking core, and that's definitely one of the big questions. I mean, I think, you know, obviously Sky Moore, one of just a few players to lead a team in tackling all 4 years he was there, which when you really sit back and think about that is just an amazing feat.
Yeah, it's crazy.
He did. Yeah, it's a crazy stat. Obviously tied for the school record with 14 interceptions. Who's going to step up and kind of be that quarterback of the defense? I think TJ Brunson's going to probably need to be that guy. I think TJ Brunson's an extremely capable player, by the way. I mean, he was basically leading the team in tackles a year ago, and you know, it just kind of worked out where Sky Moore took over and had, you know, led the team in tackles. But TJ Brunson was right there the entire year, pretty much leading the team the entire year. I expect him to have another really big season. Bryson Allen Williams needs to stay healthy as well. Sherrod Green is a really nice piece. But you're right. I think depth is, you know, somewhat of an issue. You got some capable guys. I think Danny Fennell's a good piece. Eldridge Thompson's gotten a lot better and put on I think he put on like 20 pounds in the offseason, which
I mean, Danny Fennell's more of an end. More of a buck.
Right, more of a buck. Right,
my main question would be is like coverage linebackers. How are they going to perform with Sky not being there? Because, you know, usually if we played against teams with good tight ends, they got locked down by Sky a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I mean, I think just from the leadership perspective, I mean, again, I agree with you in the sense that, the way that let's say the way that a Georgia is going to feel the effect of losing a Roquan Smith. I mean, you don't just lose a player of that caliber and not feel it to some degree. It's just, can South Carolina have someone or have a couple of players at least fill the shoes enough to where it's not a noticeable missing piece from the defense in 2018? My last question for this team in 2018, Tom, and it may be the most important question for me of all. A year ago, it's funny, I remember doing our predictions, kind of before the season, same show we're doing now. We talked about, can South Carolina grow up and go on the road and win games? And South Carolina proved that immediately. They won against NC State and Charlotte, which was a neutral site. They went on the road and beat Mizzou, and after the first two games, it kind of felt like they got that monkey off their back. Well, South Carolina turned around and laid an egg in their two biggest night games, which the Kentucky game, which followed that Missouri game, all the hype surrounding it. South Carolina fans, if they win, they're going to be ranked. South Carolina to be 3-0. The Will Muschamp era is off to a fast start. South Carolina lays an egg. Fast forward to the Clemson game last year. Same type of hype, the biggest, and I said it, the biggest South Carolina Clemson game since 2013. I even went as far to pick South Carolina to win that game, which was another freezing cold take of mine. But I picked South Carolina to win that game, and the Gamecocks again laid an egg. To me, the biggest question for this team: has South Carolina taken that next step? Have they grown up? And how are they going to handle prosperity in 2018? Because there's a decent chance, when you take a look at their schedule, there's a decent chance South Carolina, if they can upset Georgia, which a lot of people have them doing, South Carolina could start 5-0, 6-0, 7-0. Has South Carolina matured enough? And even in that game against Georgia, can they go out and control their emotions? Because that was a big thing that I noticed that players said after Kentucky and Clemson. They said they let the moment get to them. They let their emotions get to them, especially in the Kentucky game. Has South Carolina grown up as a team from 2017 to 2018 where they can really handle the moment and not let the lights be too bright for them? Because I think that was a huge, huge issue a year ago.
I agree. I think that, something that Tory Gurley says later in the interview, because I asked him about, Alabama, and then they go the next week to lose Kentucky. He said, we just were so focused on, we just beat Alabama that we didn't really prep that well for Kentucky. They laid an egg in Lexington and obviously lost that game in 2010. Could even had a better season then. But, my last question is, can Jake Bentley show up in big games? Because when you look at both of the Clemson games he's played in, Georgia last year, he was all right. And then both of the Florida games he's played it pretty atrocious, to be honest. And he has to play better in those games because, he talked about never again. They'll never get beat that bad or get, not like that. Get beaten that bad, an effort standpoint. And it just seemed like last year, he throws that pick six and it just all goes downhill. And can he, if he does make a mistake, can he come back from it and not just be the same guy he's been the last 2 years in big games? But I think if he can take that next step and play above average in those big games against Clemson and Florida and Georgia, then we're going to be set up for a great season.
Yeah, no, and I think I was actually going to say, I think our last point's kind of tying together because I think a team really reflects the attitude of two people, your head coach and your quarterback. And I think Jake Bentley's got to do a better. I agree with you 100%. And this is something good friend of our show, Brad Crawford, who has said a ton on his Twitter account as well. Jake Bentley's got to be better in big games. There were too many times a year ago where he looked rattled. He looked scared. I'm back there. I mean, I'm not afraid to say that. Against Clemson, I mean, it just too many times that's happened again in those big time moments. And you hate to put it all on him because as an offense, they just didn't have it together and didn't have it clicking, at certain times. But Jake Bentley, it all falls on you. You're the leader. You're the quarterback. You're the guy that makes that ship go. All those guys in the huddle look to you every single play. So I agree with you 100%. Jake Bentley, a huge part of South Carolina's success, especially in the offensive ball, is going to fall on the shoulders of Jake Bentley. And can he take the next step from being a good, solid quarterback to being a top of the line, top 3 or 4 SEC quarterback? I agree with you. That's going to be a huge question. I mean,
really, it comes down to, is he going to be Aaron Murray or is he going to be Connor Shaw? I mean, just really, if you think about it, is he going to be Aaron Murray and have this status of, plays well against mediocre to poor competition? Or even you think about Taj Boyd, really. I mean, obviously, Taj won ACC championships, but he could never beat South Carolina and just would freeze in those games. But is he going to be a Taj Boyd or an Aaron Murray, or is he going to be similar to Connor Shaw and Deshaun Watson? I mean, really is the best way to put it to me.
Yeah, and that's a great point you bring up because I actually talked to Barrett Salee. I think I've probably mentioned this interview a bunch on this podcast, but we interviewed Barrett Salee a couple months ago, I think back in April, and I kind of asked him, does Jake Bentley have somewhat of an Aaron Murray syndrome where the biggest knock on Aaron Murray his first couple years at Georgia is he could not win the big game? I mean, just flat out could not win the big game, whether it was his fault or not. Again, whether it's unfair, fair criticism, whatever, as the quarterback, that falls on you. And I asked him, is it, does he have a little bit of that in him? And he kind of agreed. He agreed that this is going to be a big year for Jake Bentley. He's got to take the next step. He's got to develop as a passer. He's got to be better in big games. I agree with you 100%. It's a great point. And, again, it's going to be really, really interesting to see, how it all plays out. Want to talk about our season predictions. Let's just get right into it. I mean, I'm really excited, to talk about this. I want to break it down like this, Tom. I want to kind of go through. I'll let you start. Just go ahead and run me through. What are your for sure wins when you look at this schedule? And I'll go through the schedule really quick before we get started, too. South Carolina's 2018 football schedule, in case you've been living under a rock and just don't know. South Carolina's schedule goes like this: home to Coastal, home to Georgia, home to Marshall, at Vanderbilt, at Kentucky, home to Missouri, home to Texas A&M, bye week, home to Tennessee, at Ole Miss, at Florida, home to Chattanooga, and at Clemson. So I want you to talk about, Tom, what are your out of that schedule, what are your for sure wins? What are you chalking up as a for sure loss? What are your toss-ups? Give me your most important game on the schedule, and then what is your overall record, kind of your prediction for how the season is going to play out?
I mean, I think obviously Coastal, Marshall, and Chattanooga are obviously your three cupcake games. Easily should win those by at least 20 points, in my opinion. Then you look at, at Vandy and at UK. Vandy's a team we've had a long streak over. Doubt that changes this year. I would for sure win that one. Kentucky, if you don't win that, like you said, I think you said Barrett Lee said, if Kentucky's the game you're most worried about, then you're going to have a bad season. I agree there. I think we have to beat Kentucky this year, have to end that 4 in a row, 5 in a row, whatever it is. Missouri and Tennessee at home, I think are easy wins to me. I don't think Missouri is going to be the team everybody's expecting, really. I think they're going to be good. I think they're going to be better in Florida, but I don't think they're going to be – I just don't think Drew Lock's going to be all that, what people are acting like. But, obviously I think Tennessee's still going to be down. Obviously, I just think that those, Coastal, Marshall, at Vandy, at UK, Mizzou, Tennessee, Chattanooga, all those should be guaranteed wins. And to me, my only guaranteed loss is probably Clemson, because UGA is a toss-up to me because no one really knows right now what Georgia has, especially losing Zamir White recently. And then obviously we get 2 Florida and 2 Ole Miss, and most people are picking one of those two for us to lose. So I'll throw those three in the toss-ups. And then my most important game has to be Georgia Week 2. Because if you beat Georgia Week 2 and beat them soundly like we did when we went 35-7 in Tar Heels last year there, and you say, never want to hear a sandstorm again. If you go out there and beat Georgia 35-7 when they're one of the top 3-4 teams in the country, people are going to know South Carolina's the real deal this year. But I don't think 35-7 is probably what's going to happen. I think it'll be a close game with Georgia eventually winning. And my overall record for the year is going to go 9-3 with losses to Georgia, Clemson, and Ole Miss.
Yeah, I like the take. I mean, I'll tell you this just kind of before I dive into mine. I think South Carolina worst case scenario. I mean, I think worst case they're looking at 8-4. I mean, maybe you could say 7-5 if injuries occur, but with this team, I think worst case you're looking at 8-4. I think 9-3 is a safe bet. I'll go over mine really quickly, and I want to talk about obviously comparing to the 2017 record and why we think this year could be better or worse, kind of like we've done with the position units as well. But overall, for me right now, my guaranteed wins: Coastal, Marshall, no surprise. You've got at Vandy. I think at Kentucky, I'm just going to chalk it up as a win. At some point, South Carolina's got to beat Kentucky.
Yeah.
So give the benefit of the doubt at Kentucky, Missouri, Tennessee, and Chattanooga. So I think you and I actually have the same ones. We have seven guaranteed wins. And again, to me, I just think that's the worst case scenario. I mean, I just, you could say that South Carolina could lose to Kentucky for a 5th straight year, but it's just hard for me to comprehend that happening. It really is. I mean,
it's possible.
The way I look at it, Tom, at some point I have to pick South Carolina to beat Kentucky, and they're gonna eventually beat them. So it's funny. We talked about freezing cold takes. I actually was looking at our Instagram from a year ago, and I picked South Carolina to beat Kentucky last year, 41-10. So that did not pan out. Yeah. So anyways, I've got those 7 as my guaranteed wins. I'm on the same boat as you. My only for sure loss, I think, is at Clemson. Until South Carolina can prove to me they can stay within 2 touchdowns of Clemson, I'm not putting that in the toss-up category. I'm sorry. Especially being on the road in Death Valley. It'll probably be at night. Clemson will probably be 11-0. But that game to me is also intriguing as well. If South Carolina does have a really great season and comes in that game, even if they come in that game 9-2, I mean that's going to probably be a pretty highly ranked matchup. That could be a very intriguing game. I mean,
if Clemson's undefeated, I think it would be a number like 15 or 13 versus number 1 or 2, probably.
I mean, that could be a very intriguing game. But again, until South Carolina, after last season, especially, until they can prove to me they can stay within 2 touchdowns of Clemson, I'm talking that up as a for sure loss.
Yeah.
My toss-ups, I have Georgia home to Texas A&M, at Ole Miss, at Florida. Again, I think, we obviously know the importance and the what the UGA game means. Texas A&M I have in the toss-up category simply because I don't think they're all that great, but you've lost 4 in a row to Texas A&M, similar to Kentucky, and they've got way more talent than Kentucky's got. At Ole Miss, I see as a trap game. It's a game I honestly can say I'm terrified of. I think I may feel a little better throughout the season when I watch Ole Miss play and see just how bad that defense is, but right now, that's a game that falls in a weird place in the schedule. It's just a weird place to go. Ole Miss can't go to a bowl game, have nothing to lose. That's what kind of scares you. And then at Florida is a toss-up simply because it's in the swamp, and you never know what can happen in the swamp. South Carolina's, I think, only won 2 or 3 times there.
Twice in their
entire history. So you cannot just chalk that one up as a win, in my opinion. That's got to be a toss-up. And I wouldn't be surprised out of those last 2, Ole Miss and Florida, to see South Carolina split one of those last 2 or go 1-1 in those 2 games. I went back and forth on this a lot, and I agree with you. The most important game of the season to me is Georgia. And a lot of people, we ran this poll. I'm going to pull it up here in just a second. We're running a poll actually right now that's going on, but we've been running it on an Armchair South Carolina. I wanted to kind of get a gauge of the fans, what they thought, most important game of the season was. And right now, there's 157 votes in, but 73% of the votes going with Georgia, 18% at Kentucky, 7% saying other for the most important game of the season, 2% saying Texas A&M. To me, it has to be Georgia in this sense. Even if you lose that game, if you look good doing so, if Jake Bentley and the offense show promise, if you go toe-to-toe with one of the best teams in the entire country, you're going to be set up for a really good season. You're going to come out of that game with a lot of confidence. I mean, you follow up that game with Marshall, you're going to be able to build confidence there. You go at Vandy, at Kentucky. You're going to be you should be able to win those 2 as well. I mean, you're looking to still getting off at what, a 5-1 start, possibly 6-1, 7-1. It's going to set you up to have a really great year. That game, obviously, if you can win that game, it's just a huge plus and the icing on the cake. And we've all probably heard the narrative over and over. You get a 2-game lead in the SEC East. You have the tiebreaker with Georgia. It sets you up. To me, and I'll tell you this, Tom, just kind of diving into this. If South Carolina beats Georgia and doesn't win the SEC East,
I'm going to be pissed.
It's a travesty, in my opinion.
Yeah,
it really is, because at that point, again, all of that talk and how much importance has been put in that Georgia game. I mean, I will say at that point, the most important game of the season does become a Kentucky. It does become a Texas A&M, because you can't spoil what you just did in week 2 when you go on the road to Lexington or host the Aggies in Columbia. So, but I think just right now, to get a gauge on this football team, I think Georgia week 2 is going to set the tone for the entire season. Obviously, if you beat Georgia, I think you're set up for an absolutely fantastic, maybe a special year, but if you at least show promise, you go toe-to-toe with one of the best, you have a good outing. Jake Bentley shows he's progressed. He can play well in a big game. I think that's going to set South Carolina up for success down the road for the rest of the season. My overall prediction for South Carolina, this is another one I kind of went back and forth on. Again, I think 8-4, 7-5 is really worst case. I'm going to go with 9-3 for my prediction. I'm going to say they're going to have losses to Georgia, Ole Miss, and Clemson. I've gone back and forth on that Georgia game, and I really may pick them to beat Georgia the week of the game. But right now, 9-3 feels like the right spot for this team. It does. It just 8-4 doesn't feel quite good enough, and 10-2 is I just can't push myself to 10-2 right now. I need to see it. I need to see it happen before I believe it, Tom, if that makes sense. Before I'm going to say South Carolina's going to go 10-2 and get double-digit wins for the first time since 2013. I need to see it happen. But I think South Carolina 9-3 is extremely realistic for them. And again, I still think you got a great chance to get double-digit wins if everyone can stay healthy, if South Carolina can find some answers to the questions that we asked a little bit ago. Speaking of that, like I said, we've done this with our position, our season preview series, talking about offense, defense, special teams, why they'll be better, why they'll be worse. Well, I wanted to take that into this as well with the record. South Carolina a year ago was 8-4 in the regular season, 9-4 with their bowl win over Michigan. I want to talk about, Tom, why do you think South Carolina could have a better record, or why do you think they'll have a worse record? I'll start with why I think they could have a better record in 2018. for me, the biggest thing is that South Carolina is just more experienced. I mean, they returned 14 starters from a year ago. Jake Bentley's a year older. You basically get the entire offense back. Everyone's healthy. You get Deebo Samuel back. You lose Sky Moore on defense, and you lose some key pieces. But overall, it's Will Muschamp getting another year in that system. Javon Kinlaw has grown up in that system and should be an absolute beast on the defensive line. DJ Wanham is in his junior season. And Will Muschamp has recruited well enough, I think, in the secondary to have some young guys coming to make a big impact. But overall, I just think, South Carolina in Will Muschamp's first season, I think South Carolina, was I think they were the only team in FBS. I remember this stat. The only team in FBS to have their leading passer and rusher both be a freshman. It was Jake Bentley and Rico Dowdle, and South Carolina won 6 games. You go to last year, South Carolina wins 8 games regular season, 9 games of the bowl when they were Michigan, as those guys being sophomores. It only makes sense as this experience as they get older, they're going to get better. As they get better, this team gets better. And I think that's a reason why South Carolina could eclipse that 8-9 win mark in 2018.
And I agree. I think you make a lot of good points, especially about the defense. But to me, what you're supposed to be worried about with South Carolina, Will Muschamp especially, is can the offense show up? And I think that this year, the answer is going to be yes. I think the offensive line looks a lot better. Obviously, Corey Helms, Alan Knott were both, good pieces. But I think that when you put Sedarius Hutcherson and Zach Bailey together at guard, I just think it's going to be hard for somebody to just – I just think they're going to be a really good combination. They're going to be able to move a lot better. Zach Bailey is going to be dominating defense tackles for a long time, probably going to be a guy who plays on Sundays a lot. And I just think that, with Brian McClendon as the OC, I think that he's going to be more explosive with the ball. You're going to see more Spurrier-type play calling than Kurt Roper, which was just sometimes awful to watch. But I have a lot of faith in McClendon, especially with what they've been saying, during, coaches' interviews. They're being more explosive with the offense. They're doing more creative things. I like to hear that. I think those two reasons with the offensive line and McClendon as the OC if that offense can get the boost to where they're 25 or 28 points a game instead of 21, I think it'll make a big difference this year.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I it's funny. I'd be a lot more worried about the McClendon hire if they didn't bring in Dan Werner. I think he's going to be a game changer. And I just like the aspect of that Brian McClendon is not going to be doing this by himself. He's got a guy in Dan Werner that has seen it work. He's been part of some of the best offenses in the SEC. He's transformed some quarterbacks. What he did with Chad Kelly and Bo Wallace at Ole Miss. I mean, he's been around Alabama as an offensive analyst. He knows what good football looks like. So I think that's going to help Brian McClendon. And you brought up a great point. Don't forget about Donnell Stanley either at center. It's crazy. That was one of my big questions and something I was kind of worried about. But the more that I hear South Carolina coaches, players talk about him, South Carolina they might be in a really good spot with Donnell Stanley. I mean, Muschamp has said in the scrimmages they've had no issues with snaps. I mean, Donnell Stanley was named a Remington preseason award watch list nominee. I mean,
he's never played center.
He's never played the position. So somebody knows something maybe we don't know. So, in nothing else, South Carolina has 3 guys over 300 pounds at the middle of their offensive line, guard, center, guard. So, like you said, I think that trio of Zach Bailey, Donnell Stanley, Sedarius Hutcherson that's automatically, in my opinion, going to make the South Carolina running game better. There's going to be more holes there. They're going to be able to impose their will.
I think they're going to get a lot better push this year than last year. And I think that's something you're going to notice big time is where the line of scrimmage is once the running back gets the ball.
Yeah, I agree 100%. So, got to flip the other side, Tom. What do you think would be the reason if South Carolina were to have a worse record than they have in 2017? What would it be?
I mean, you look at last year, and 6 of our 9 wins were by 8 points or less. Obviously, we had the ball roll our way a lot, especially, against, you look at Louisiana Tech. Texas A&M obviously didn't go our way, blew a 10-point lead. But I just think that it's rare in the SEC for Florida and Tennessee to be garbage in the same year. It all for them to both be garbage, and then it happened in the same year is something that's unheard of. And I think that helped us a lot last year, and it helped boost us to 8 wins. But we beat Tennessee by 6 and beat Florida by 8. And those are both teams I feel like, especially with how they played last year, we should have beat by 2 touchdowns or more easily. And I don't think they're going to be as bad this year. Obviously, I think Tennessee's still going to be pretty bad, but I think Florida's going to be better. I don't believe the hype saying that they're going to finish second in the East and win 8 or 9 games. Don't believe that. But I think that those two teams can maybe come. I don't think Tennessee, but I think, you look at that last 3 games, you go to Ole Miss, to Florida, and then at Chattanooga and at Clemson, you could end up going 1-3 in those games, and that would not be good.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And mine kind of is similar to yours as well. I mean, I think the one thing that's going to hold South Carolina back and why they could take a step back if they do record-wise. The biggest thing to me is that the Tide the ball doesn't bounce your way in those close games.
Yeah.
You're not able to force those turnovers you were able to get a year ago. We talked to Michael Felder a couple weeks ago. You guys probably heard the show. Michael Felder talked about it. I mean, it's okay to admit that turnovers a lot of times are luck. They just are. I mean, the ball bounces your way, you recover it, you're in the right position at the right time, et cetera, et cetera. So is South Carolina going to continue to be able to be on the right side of those turnovers? And I'm not doubting they will. I mean, I know that South Carolina, from a culture standpoint, they're all about the ball. That's kind of ingrained in them. And I think that's a product of what you saw a year ago, but it doesn't always work out that way. And you just hope that South Carolina can continue to play well as an underdog, be able to capitalize on turnovers, and stay positive in that number, because I think that to me would be the only thing that could really derail their season if South Carolina turns the football over and doesn't win the turnover battle game in, game out. So that's pretty much going to wrap us up without actually not going to wrap us up, because I want to go over what our Armchair South Carolina team, their predictions as well. I didn't want to leave out those guys, Austin Sylvie, Noah Pathea, Ben Parsons, a good friend of ours who's actually the NHL department head, who is a student at the University of South Carolina. But I want to go over kind of what those guys said. Again, you can give us your feedback, your reactions on social media. We'd love to hear it. We'll probably have a graphic going out tomorrow too with all of our predictions, which should be a lot of fun. We'd love to hear what you guys are predicting for the season. It's funny, we actually ran a poll. I'll pull that up right now. What the majority, Tom, of Twitter users, the Twitterverse, thinks how many games South Carolina is going to win. Okay, so we got the poll right now. It's only been up for an hour, but we already got 103 votes on it. How many games will the Gamecocks win this season? We've got 0-5, 6-8, 9-11, and 12+. 9-11 lead the way right now. 81% think 9-11 wins. So a lot of people expecting the Gamecocks to have a good season.
And I think most of those people who are clicking 9-11 are clicking more on the 9 side than 11.
Oh, yeah. No, for sure. Second most is 6-8 with 14%. Funny. Third most is 12+ with 5%, and then 0-5 has 0%.
If we win 12+ games, I will literally let any one of my friends who listen to this podcast, you can come on the show and say anything you want to for 5 minutes, and we'll upload it if we win 12 games.
Oh yeah, no, we're gonna have to do something, that's for sure. But I want to go over again what our Armchair South Carolina team, what they predicted for the season. Austin Sylvie predicted the Gamecocks go 10-2, only losses to Ole Miss and Clemson. He actually has South Carolina winning the SEC East, so he is one of the few that's actually got the Gamecocks going to Atlanta, losing in Atlanta in the SEC championship game. I'll give you guys some kind of his comments. Says there are concerns with depth in most spots, not called wide receiver. Back into the defense is still under construction. But the silver lining is all the secondary players are getting practice in each position. J.C. Horn, Hank Manos, Brad Johnson, he says, are a few of the younger players he sees having bigger impacts. Thinks if they beat Georgia early, which he believes they will, the SEC East is theirs to lose just 2 weeks into the season. Again, Tom, I mean, I know Austin can't really speak for himself back to what I'm about to say, but I mean, I agree with you. I mean, I think his prediction's spot on. Again, it's just for me, I need to see it before I can predict that. Yeah, I need to see it happen.
And the only thing I would say with him is that him saying Hank Manos is going to be a big role this year, I don't see where that's going to happen at really, other than like maybe PAT and kicks, but I don't really get where he's coming with that from. But J.C. Horn and Brad Johnson, I agree with the two players that people aren't. Well, J.C. Horn's obviously a lot of people talking about, but Brad Johnson's a guy that's not a lot of people are talking about that I can see have a big impact this year.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think Hank Manos, from a depth perspective, I think he'll be a big player there, because when you run that up-tempo offense, somebody's probably going to have to spell Donnell Stanley time to time, and they're really high on Manos, obviously. Yeah. But anyways, Noah Pathea, our other member of our Armchair South Carolina team, he's got the Gamecocks 8-4 with losses to Georgia, Clemson, Texas A&M, and he says either Ole Miss or Florida. So, not completely off base there. I can see it. I definitely can. I mean, I think it would be extremely disappointing, and just disappointing to lose to Texas A&M for a 5th year in a row. But I can't say that I can't see that happening.
We're Carolina fans, dude. Like, we expect that to happen.
That's the reason I almost put Texas A&M as the most important game of the season. I mean, that was really for me between Georgia and Texas A&M, because I think A&M could be a swing game this season for South Carolina, because on one side of the coin, the performance against Georgia is so important, but on the other side of the coin, if you don't beat Kentucky and Texas A&M, it's really for naught, whether you beat them or not. So, we'll see. But anyways, Ben Parsons, again, NHL department head, also a student at the University of South Carolina. has contributed for us a little bit as well. We included him on this. He actually has the Gamecocks going 10-2, SEC East champs. Losses to Clemson and probably Ole Miss, he says. He has them losing in Atlanta in the SEC championship game. But two of the, two of our writers of South Carolina and Atlanta. Tom, what do you think?
I disagree. I just don't think they have it. I don't think they have the roster depth to beat Georgia, and I don't think that – I think they lose to Georgia. I think realistically what's probably going to happen is they're going to go 1-1 to start with, and then not lose a game until you go to that the row of death, what I would call it, going to at Florida, at Ole Miss, then at Florida, then Chattanooga, then Clemson. I think that at worst they go 8-4 because of that, and I think at best they go 10-2 with losses to Georgia and Clemson. I just don't see it happening this year.
Yeah, I don't think it's impossible. Like I said, I'm just waiting.
It's not impossible, but I think it's less than likely, in my opinion.
Right. I'm just in wait and see mode again. I need to see South Carolina take the next step in a couple of different areas. That's all I'll say about it. But I think the potential is there. I mean, again, if you beat Georgia, I think you're set up. You're in prime position to win the SEC East. You're in full control. And again, that's going to come back to kind of one of the questions I had. If South Carolina beats Georgia, can they handle being the ones with the target on their back? Are they mature enough to handle prosperity and handle success and be able to be that team that everybody's coming after? So that'll be a big question as well. That's pretty much going to do it for us. I mean, again, it's crazy to think next week we're going to be previewing the Coastal Carolina Chanticleers, previewing the Gamecocks, opening game. I mean, it's going to be game week, which I know I'm ecstatic, Tom. I know you're excited. Everybody's really excited. We finally get some football. We've actually got something on the field to talk about. Obviously fall practices have been closed. There really isn't anything coming out of fall camp at this point. Which is really good news in my opinion. As long as everyone's staying healthy, that's really all that matters. Come out of fall camp healthy, that's the best thing you can ask for. Will Muschamp has his call-in show actually on Thursday, so I think that'll be something cool to tune into. But other than that, I mean, Tom, you got anything else? Any other news that's been going on? I know I don't want to forget about the commitment that South Carolina got last Friday from cornerback Cam Smith. That was a big commitment, big pickup. Tom, what was you're kind of our recruiting guru. What's kind of your take on that commitment?
I think he's a good player. I think that he's going to be a guy that a lot of people were saying he's the best DB to come out of South Carolina since Stephon Gilmore. I don't know about that because I don't really know the list of DBs since Stephon Gilmore played at South Carolina that's come out and played or played in the NFL or had successful college careers. But I think he's going to be a guy that's going to end up being a starter for South Carolina. He's a big time commit because obviously you look at, you lost on Jalen McConnell, so you had to get another guy, and Cam Smith was the guy they got. So I think, 6'1" corner, you're going to take Monday through Sunday, every day of the week. Yeah,
no, absolutely. I mean, I know that's a big one they were trying to get, and forgive me because I'm going to screw this up, and people are going to say that I don't know what I'm talking about, but the name is just slipped my mind. Who's the kid South Carolina got a week ago? They went into Georgia's backyard and pulled him out. DJ Daniel. There you go. Yep. I promise I know who he is, fans. His name slipped my mind. But, yeah, I mean, that's one, too. You obviously wrote an article, but, I mean, that, Tom, coming from a recruiting perspective, that's a huge pickup, in my opinion, just because anytime you can go into the state of Georgia and pull a kid that UGA wants, I mean, that they definitely want, that's a big win for Will Muschamp.
I agree. I think that because obviously you look at it, he's won and lost some matchups with Kirby Smart, and I think that winning DJ Daniel is going to go a really long way.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. But, yeah, like I said, I mean, other than that, that's pretty much going to do it. Tom, anything else I missed? Any other news going on? I mean, other than some small stuff, I think that's pretty much it.
Taven Jackson, got the medical hardship discharge. Yep. They're going to honor a scholarship, which is great for him. Glad that he can get his degree. Cam Smith, Jaquaz Sorrell, the defensive tackle from Florida, he's between, I think, us and Oregon and another college I can't get off the top of my head. He's coming August 27th, 6 days from now. He'll be a big, you get him, you look at our defense line overall, it's looking pretty good for the 2019 class. But I think other than that, that pretty much sums it up. Obviously, less than, 2 weeks from game day.
Yeah, definitely. We'll have Sorrell's, full commitment coverage on Armchair South Carolina, so stay tuned for that. Obviously, like you said, a really big one for the 2019 class. But yeah, other than that, I think that's pretty much going to do it. Again, next time we come to you guys, we'll be talking about Coastal Carolina. It'll be game week. I know I'm fired up. Everybody's fired up, and we're looking forward to it. But other than that, appreciate you guys tuning in. Enjoy this interview with former Gamecocks wide receiver Tori Gurley. And again, we will catch you next time. Stay tuned.